Okay, so what we have here is a pretty basic piece of line work, and I want to talk about how to give this a little bit more character. The lines were placed using a rapidograph. This is a pretty old one, but the tip is new. You can buy the tips for like $12 or so. Anyhow, this is India ink. So with your basic line drawing, you can, do rendering of various sorts. Mobius Paul Gérard was famous for doing a weird thing like this, and rendering with lines to suggest curvature of a form. There's pointillism and dots and stippling and all kinds of other ways you can suggest shape. Personally, what I like to do is use line itself to suggest shape. So when I have a line that's continuous, it's clear that there's a boundary, but when the line's broken up, it suggests to the eye that it's a shading or a light is more what's dealing with things than the form itself. So this side of the foot over here, I'm going to give that example of that kind of shading, if you will, with line. Because you can see it's broken up. I'm going to do this here to the part of the buttocks. As you can see, it's broken up. I don't end the lines simply like that, because then it feels, I don't know, forced or something like of that sort. When I place the lines and I continue them with a few dots or smaller lines, it gives the viewer's eye something to, it's like a trail. It's like, it's suggested that the line might go on. So here we have a pretty basic line drawing. And again, what I want to talk about is giving this more character. And for that, I'm going to use pretty heavy usage of ink on the lines. And I'm going to be using something to dab with, as you'll shortly see. So I have my ink here in a, this is a tequila container. Open that up and get my tools for drawing. For dabbing, I'm going to be using this piece of it's plastic sponge. It was used for packing some junk or something like that. Probably some oil markers. Anyway, so this is a Speedball nib. It is a 513 EF made by the Speedball company. They're, I don't know, like 70 cents a pop. And this is a fine, I think it's 22 EF. They're a little different. This was more flexible, so it means that when you press harder, the line gets thicker, and it makes very, very fine points. Anyhow, I'm going to dip my pen. I'm going to check it to see how much ink is there. If there's too much, I dab. Okay. So I'm going to lay my lines with this 513 EF pretty thick, and I don't know if you can see there, but there's a lot of ink on that line, and it's not dry. So I'm going to dab it with a sponge very gently, and it creates all kinds of blurring and accidents. Again, there's a lot of ink on this tip right now. I'm going around some areas, some shapes, but I'm not going inside of the parts of the anatomy very much. I'm going to let the small lines do that. And this side here I'm going to pull with a sponge. I think I probably started doing this when, you know, as a mistake. And I think I probably had to, I was probably working on a drawing that's very complicated and had to rescue it somehow. Probably quite a long time ago. Okay, this here on this hand, I'm going to put a little more detail with a small nib before I continue. What's attractive in this technique is the contrast between fine line, heavier line, and you can see that there are things that are done carefully and some things that are done chaotically, that's just left by chance. So it's interesting to see in a work of art when those things are in balance and they don't, you know, fuck with each other. Suggesting the knuckles here with some detail. Making sure to leave some areas without anything, otherwise it gets too busy. Gotta leave something for the viewer's imagination to put together in their minds as they look. Okay, so there's a little more work there. Occasionally I might throw in random dots. You don't want the thing too clean. Okay, now back to my nib. I'm going to outline the parts of the hand here. Again, there's a lot of ink. Now when you dab, you can't be too scared, and it's got to be okay to make mistakes and have things go wrong. It's a pretty unforgiving medium here, working with ink. It's not much you can do to erase, so you gotta make your peace with it if things don't go exactly as you planned. Okay, that's pretty wet. Alright, well, I think I made my point. Here's the drawing. It's a 7.5 by 11 piece of paper. It is Stonehenge paper, so it's a cotton paper. It treats and absorbs ink in a different way. If you use regular cardstock, for example, it would bleed like crazy and you wouldn't get thin lines. With a nice cotton paper like this, you actually can get very nice thin lines. Let me give you something for size comparison. But you can see here where we made heavier lines compared to a place that doesn't have them yet, in very little detail. Quite different. Not for everybody, but that's the way I like to work with ink, for one.